Hey guys, it's Kyle again, welcome back. Really quick, I'd like to summarize again. This series is about learning a general playstyle. A general playstyle will default to taking the most consistent risk versus reward situation, and it also helps reduce the randomness and holes in your game plan. This is really helpful when playing against people you don't know, and is especially strong in ranked play where scrambles and random stuff happen often. After cultivating a strong general playstyle, you can then branch out more easily to more advanced techniques, since now you have a solid foundation to work from. With that out of the way, welcome to the final video in the series, General Offense in Street Fighter V. Now, when it's your turn to get your offense rolling, people can do some wild stuff on defense, even up to higher layers of Diamond. I need you to understand that it doesn't matter how sick their offense or neutral was just now, or how good of a player you think they are, their defense can still be awful. It's a jungle out there. The reason they'll do wild stuff is they don't understand their situation when they're put on defense, or maybe just don't understand their risk versus reward, or maybe even their brain just goes to mush when someone is standing on top of them. You really can't know for sure, and I'm going to give you the tech to minimize your risk while still being able to take your turn as often as you can. It's very, very rare for an opponent to literally do nothing on defense. More often than not, they're going to be using a lot of bad defensive options, and the reason these options are bad is that they all lose to frame traps, and this is important to understand. If you don't already know, a frame trap is a series of normals that don't just combo on hit, but also gives you advantage on block while only leaving a small window for your opponent. Perfect for them to get caught using one of these bad options. These include reversal buttons instead of delayed buttons, jumping, using meterless moves, or using armored moves. If a meterless move has invincibility to buttons, it's only from frame 3 at earliest, not frame 1. It'll lose to tight frame traps. For armored moves, again, it's only armored from frame 3, except for 2 exceptions in the game and maybe a handful of V-trigger moves, but that's truly more like very specific matchup knowledge, not general game knowledge. 90% of armored moves in the game, including the ones that use meter, lose to tight frame traps. If you have worries about your frame trap, because even if on paper your frame trap doesn't win because it doesn't have a smaller than a 3 frame gap, there's a weird correlation you gotta know about that occurs in both low level and high level that makes us worry about loose frame traps kinda negligible. So the lower level nuts always do their bad option on wake up, which loses to frame traps. They don't do it during your strings unless they see you doing fat stagger pressure strings, which is not what you're doing. And then as your opponent's level rises, they know better than to do these bad options in between your frame traps because of how risky it is. So the risk of you eating one of these bad options in between a slightly loose frame trap is very rare at lower level, and then pretty much phases itself out as you get to higher levels. So I wouldn't worry too much about the tightness of your frame trap until your opponent shows you they're willing to contest it in that very risky way. Now, of course, there are better defensive options for your opponent to use, but before we even talk about those options and how to deal with them, you need to first practice being able to loop your opponent to death if they don't use a real defensive option. So the idea is, in a real match, if you get close, you want to have the ability to use frame traps, convert any hits from the frame trap into a combo, and from that combo get a specific type of knockdown that lets you keep your pressure going, so you can repeat the whole loop again until they die if they don't decide to use a real defensive option. So if you set the training dummy to just hold up, you should be able to combo the dummy, get close enough after the knockdown, and be able to combo the dummy again before it can jump off of the ground, and rinse and repeat. Now unfortunately, this isn't as easy as it sounds. First, you gotta know your frame traps in and out. Usually, you only have just a few of these, and you need to practice confirming these into knockdowns consistently. Next, you'll want to end your combos with something that lets you continue your pressure, if possible without using meter, so it can loop into itself more easily. Yes, you probably know some different sick combo ender that does more damage, but unless it will stun, you really shouldn't go for that combo ender and instead should opt for the one that lets you continue your pressure. After that, understand your situation after your knockdowns, otherwise called okizeme or oki for short. Your character usually only has a handful of different knockdowns, and from these knockdowns, you need to be very comfortable with the oki and what kind of pressure you can get after, whether they back rise or quick rise. An easy way to get comfortable with this is record a wake up option for the training dummy where it hits a light button. Turn that option on, then do your typical knockdowns and see how close you can get or what buttons you have to make contact with before the training dummy can hit you. Now that you're comfortable with your frame traps, you know which combo ender gets you more pressure, and you're comfortable with your Oki, on paper, you should be able to destroy someone who doesn't use real defensive option. Many players, especially in Diamond, have gotten where they are with very poor defense, so you will see a lot of people abusing their bad defensive options they've been getting away with specifically, and I want you to really pound it into them. I'm doing these buff frame traps all the way. You better block your dome or use a real option. These people will usually get knocked down 1, 2, or 3 more times than normal for using their bad options, which usually means you just won the round or the game or the set, and you didn't even need to think that hard about it. And I gotta really reiterate, this is a real thing. People, for many different reasons, don't block and end up losing rounds, matches, and sets because of it, and I still think it's fucking wild.